Howdy folks, this is Paul. Welcome to this short presentation on the 2009-2010 Tour d'Afrique. This presentation will discuss the distances, the climbs, the calories as we traveled from Cairo to Cape Town. This was with Tour d'Afrique, and the tour breaks the ride into 8 different sections that are listed here. The total distance ridden on a bicycle was about 7,200 miles. In comparison, that would be like going from Jacksonville, Florida down to Santiago, Chile, as far as being in the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, starting around 33 degrees north latitude and ending around 33 degrees south latitude. If we traveled the same distance in the United States, we'd go from Minneapolis, St. Paul down to New Orleans, over to Los Angeles, up to Salt Lake City, across to New York, and then back to Minneapolis. So let's just take a look at these 10 countries a little more closely. You'll see we went through some deserts and some mountains, and here are the 10 countries that are listed. This chart shows the cumulative distance that we went. We went about 12,000 kilometers. The y-axis is in kilometers, the x-axis is in days. So you see we started in mid-January, and about 120 days later we ended, and that was 12,000 kilometers later. Our average mileage per day was about 100 kilometers, and that included rest days. If we just looked at the days that we rode, it was about 120 kilometers per day when we rode. Down at the bottom now you can see the 10 different countries. The green dashes are an indication of the days that we spent in each country. For example, 11 days in Egypt, 16 days in Sudan, etc. This chart shows where I went in 2009. In March of 2009, I had an accident, broke my arm, so I started again in Nairobi and in 2010 and finished the ride in May of 2010. If we look at the distance covered per day, again on the y-axis we see kilometers, we averaged about 120 kilometers per day. And about every 5 or 6 days we'd have a rest day, and that's why you see some gaps along the x-axis. The yellow bar is the average of 120 kilometers today. The red bar, each bar represents 1 day's ride. And you can see that one day we went over 200 kilometers. If we look again at the cumulative climb, this is taking the elevation that we gained each day, not subtracting out how much we went downhill, but this would be the elevation each day. And we can see that in countries like Ethiopia in particular, maybe Malawi also, we had on average a little bit more climbs in those countries because, you know what, those were mountainous countries. The daily distance climbed is shown here. Again, now on the y-axis we have meters. On the x-axis we have days. You can see that one day we had a climb of about 2,500 meters. And our average ride day climb was about 760 meters, or about a half mile in climbing each day that we rode. This chart shows the meters above sea level, both on a daily maximum and a daily minimum. The maximum is in blue, the minimum is in red. Starting in Cairo and ending in Cape Town. You can see our maximum elevation, we got up to over 10,000 feet one day. That's over 3,000 meters above sea level. If we expand out this chart into 2 different charts, here we can see from Cairo to Cape Town again with a little more data put in it. And I'll expand it to 2 different charts. This chart goes for 60 days from Cairo to Nairobi. Nairobi is about a mile high, like Denver. And you can see that certain cities like Addis Ababa, Gondar, high elevation cities. Compare that with the green bar. That's the elevation of Minneapolis, St. Paul in Minnesota. So, after we got out of Egypt and into Sudan, we gained in elevation a lot. We stayed above the elevation of Minneapolis-St. Paul. Looking at the second half of the ride from Nairobi to Cape Town, again, we stayed at very high elevations relative to the Minnesota anyway, and a fair bit of high plateaus that we went across in mountainous areas. Finally, this chart looks at the calories on the y-axis that were burned during the ride. On the x-axis is the distance on a particular day that we rode. So each red dot is a day's ride, the distance and the calories that were projected to be burned by somebody about my size. And it averaged about 4,500 calories per day. In addition, I would need another about 2,000 calories just for maintenance. So you can see that we consumed an awful lot of food to get these calories that were required. I'd like to acknowledge Joachim Waffel, who was a rider in 2008 and again in 2009, who obtained a lot of these data, and I've summarized and adapted these data from Joachim. There we have it. Thank you.